If you enjoy chaotic stories about people getting exactly what they deserve, tap the subscribe button so you never miss the next one. Story 1. I was 12 when a Karen started yelling at me for sitting on the wrong side of a park bench. She claimed it was meant for seniors, even though the sign behind her said absolutely nothing about age. My dad walked over after hearing her voice from across the playground and calmly asked why a grown woman was screaming at a kid, and she turned bright red and left without another word. Story 2. I was working as a lifeguard one summer when a woman marched over to my stand and accused a group of kids of splashing her on purpose. She insisted I kick them out of the pool, even though they were clearly just playing Marco Polo. When I pointed out the pool was literally designed for splashing, she demanded my manager and told him I was encouraging reckless behaviour. The manager ended up giving her a warning for harassment instead, and she spent the rest of the day sitting in a lounge chair fuming while the kids laughed every time they swam past. Story 3. I was 15 and bagging groceries when a Karen started lecturing me because I did not stack her eggs on top of the bread the way she preferred. She leaned over the counter and told me I was clearly too stupid to work with food, which was wild considering I was still wearing my school backpack. My supervisor overheard her tone from 2 aisles away and came running, then told her she could either apologise to me or leave the store immediately. She tried to argue that she was teaching me responsibility, but he cut her off and cancelled her entire order while the line of customers behind her stared. She stormed out calling the place unprofessional, and the lady next in line bought me a candy bar and said I was doing great. Story 4. I was about 8 when a neighbour decided it was her job to yell at me for riding my bike too fast down the sidewalk. She grabbed my handlebars and told me kids like me were why the neighbourhood was going downhill. My mum saw it from our porch and sprinted across the yard so fast I thought she was going to trip. She told the woman to take her hands off her child, or the police would be involved. And suddenly, the neighbour acted like she had just been trying to be helpful and backed away without another word. Story 5. I was working at a movie theatre concession stand when a Karen started yelling at a group of middle school kids for whispering in line. She claimed they were ruining the entire experience, even though the previews had not even started yet. When one kid rolled his eyes, she snapped and demanded their tickets so she could have them removed from the building. My manager stepped in and told her she did not have any authority to confiscate tickets, then asked the kids if they were bothering anyone. They all shook their heads and stayed calm, so he refunded the woman instead and told her she was welcome to leave if the environment was not up to her standards. Story 6. I was a camp counsellor at a day camp when a woman cornered one of my 10-year-olds and started yelling because he had taken what she thought was her daughter's water bottle. He tried to explain it had his name written in marker on the side, but she talked over him and told him to stop lying. I walked over and gently turned the bottle so she could see his name, and she froze like someone had unplugged her. Instead of apologising, she told me I should teach kids better manners, and I told her she should try modelling them, which got me written up but felt completely worth it. Story 7. I was 14 working my first job at a fast food place when a Karen lost her mind because a kid in the drive-through line was taking too long to count his change. She leaned out of her SUV and started yelling at him to hurry up because some people had real jobs to get to. The kid's mum stepped out of their car, walked straight up to her window and calmly stated that her son had autism and needed a moment. The Karen tried to mumble an excuse about being late, but the entire line of cars just stared at her until she rolled her window up and stopped talking. Story 8. I was babysitting my little cousin at a mall food court when a woman came over and accused him of stealing her fries. He was 4 and had ketchup all over his face from the nuggets I had bought him, but she pointed at him like he was a hardened criminal. I told her he had not gone anywhere near her table, and she insisted kids lie better than adults. Security ended up checking the cameras and showed her footage of another customer accidentally taking her tray, and instead of apologizing, she left without her food, probably out of pure embarrassment. Story 9. I was 11 when a Karen yelled at me for chalk drawing a hopscotch board on the sidewalk outside our apartment building. She claimed it was vandalism and told me she was calling the police on a child with sidewalk chalk. My older brother came outside, pointed at the rain clouds rolling in, and said the weather was about to erase my crime scene anyway, which made her scoff and stomp back inside. Story 10. I was 16, volunteering at the library when a woman started snapping at a group of kids for laughing too loudly at a comic book. She walked over and told them reading was not supposed to be fun, which sounded like something a cartoon villain would say. When I politely reminded her the kids' section was meant to be relaxed, she demanded I remove them from the building. The head librarian overheard and told her the only rule being broken was her tone, and the kids got free bookmarks while she got escorted out. Story 11. I was 9 years old at a little league game when a Karen leaned over the fence and started screaming at me because I missed an easy catch. She shouted that I was embarrassing the whole team and asked my dad why he even let me play if I was not serious about winning. My coach jogged over and told her she was no longer welcome near the field because players were children, not her personal punching bags. She tried to defend herself by saying she was building character, but the other parents told her to pack up her chair and leave, and I remember feeling like I had just been rescued by a small army. Story 12. I was working retail at a shoe store when a Karen came in with her teenage son and started yelling at him because he could not find his size. She kept calling him useless loud enough for the entire store to hear, and I watched his shoulders just sink while he pretended to look at sneakers. When I offered to help, she told me not to coddle him because the real world would be worse. My manager overheard and walked up with the most polite smile I had ever seen, then told her that verbally abusing minors in the store was against policy and she needed to leave. She argued that she was his mother and could say whatever she wanted, and he replied that not in his store, then walked her and her stunned kid straight to the door. Story 13. I was about 10 at a swimming lesson when a woman started yelling at a boy for not jumping off the diving board fast enough. She was not even related to him, just standing there with her arms crossed like she owned the pool. The kid was shaking and clearly scared of the height, so our instructor climbed up and knelt beside him while telling the woman that bullying was not encouragement. She scoffed and said kids today were too soft, but she ended up being told to leave when parents began recording her on their phones. Story 14. I was 13, waiting in line at an amusement park when a Karen started barking at a little girl because she was swinging her legs and lightly kicking the railing. She demanded the kid stand still and threatened to report her to security for unsafe behaviour. The girl's dad calmly replied that his daughter had sensory issues and the movement helped her stay calm. The Karen rolled her eyes and muttered something about fake excuses, which was when the ride operator came over and told her to step out of line because complaints about children were not grounds for special treatment. Story 15. I was working as a referee for kids soccer when a woman ran onto the field during halftime to yell at a goalie who was maybe 7 years old. She told him he was the reason the team was losing and that he needed to toughen up if he wanted to be a winner. I stepped between them and reminded her that parents were not allowed on the field, but she claimed she had every right because it was her nephew. The head coach walked over, told her the game was for fun, not emotional damage, and had her removed from the sidelines while the kids all stared like they had just watched someone get ejected from reality. Story 16. I was about 7 when a Karen at the dentist office started yelling at me for spinning in the waiting room chair. She said kids like me were why nobody respected public spaces anymore. My mum calmly slid the chair back under the desk, looked the woman dead in the eye, and told her the dentist was about to drill her mouth for 40 minutes, so maybe she should save her energy. Story 17. I was a substitute teacher in a fourth grade classroom when a woman burst in during dismissal and started yelling at a boy because he had taken the wrong backpack home the day before. She waved the bag in his face and accused him of stealing, even though he was already crying and saying it was a mistake. I stepped between them and asked her to lower her voice, but she doubled down and claimed kids needed to learn consequences early. The principal happened to walk by, took one look at the situation, and escorted her straight out of the building while promising the kid he was not in trouble. Later that afternoon, the boy handed me a crumpled thank you note with stick figures on it, and I still have it in my desk drawer. Story 18. I was 13, riding my skateboard through a church parking lot when a woman came running out of the building and started screaming that I was going to run over her grandson, who was not even in the lot. She chased me halfway down the sidewalk, calling me disrespectful and threatening to call the cops on a child with a board under his arm. When my mum pulled up to pick me up, the woman marched over and demanded she discipline me properly. My mum listened quietly, then told her the lot was empty. I was wearing a helmet, and she was done yelling at kids she did not know. And something about the way she said it made the woman suddenly remember an urgent appointment somewhere else. Story 19. I was working at a frozen yogurt shop when a Karen leaned over the toppings bar and started snapping at a little girl because she was taking too many gummy bears. She told the kid she was greedy and ruining it for everyone, which made the girl freeze with the scoop mid-air. I walked over and gently said the toppings were included in the price. And the woman replied that kids needed discipline from strangers sometimes. My boss overheard and told her if she spoke to another child in the store, she would be asked to leave, then gave the girl an extra cup of gummy bears on the house. Story 20. I was 10 years old in line at a pet store adoption event when a woman started yelling at me because I was asking too many questions about the kittens. She said I was holding up the line and that kids should be seen, not heard in adult spaces. The volunteer running the booth smiled at me and told me to keep asking questions because that was how you learn to care for animals. The Karen huffed, tried to shove her way to the front, and ended up being told to leave the event entirely for cutting and harassing a child. Story 21. I was a youth basketball coach when a woman started screaming from the bleachers at one of my players for missing free throws. He was 9 and already looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. I paused the game, walked over to her, and reminded her that this was not the NBA, and nobody was being scouted. She argued that kids needed pressure to succeed, so I told her the only pressure happening was her blood pressure, and asked her to leave before she popped a vessel, which got a laugh from half the gym and finally made her shut up. Story 22. I was working security at a community pool when a Karen cornered a teenage lifeguard because a group of kids had splashed water near her book. She followed him around, yelling about respect and laziness while he tried to do his job. I stepped in and told her she could either calm down or leave the facility for the day. She insisted that I should fire him on the spot, and I replied that the only person in danger of removal was her, which earned me a round of applause from parents who had clearly been waiting for someone to say it. Story 23. I was in line at an ice cream truck when a woman started lecturing a little boy because he dropped a quarter on the ground and had to look for it. She told him he was wasting everyone's time and that kids today had no work ethic. The boy's grandma quietly bent down, helped him find the coin, and then handed him a $5 bill while staring straight at the woman. The kid walked away with 2 popsicles and the kind of grin you only get when an adult absolutely has your back. Story 24. I was a pediatric nurse when a Karen stormed up to the desk and started yelling at a 12-year-old patient because he was using the last charging outlet in the waiting room. She accused him of being selfish and demanded he unplug his tablet for her phone. I calmly explained that he was waiting for test results and had been there for hours, but she said her business call mattered more than children's games. My charge nurse overheard and told her the hospital was for sick kids, not angry adults, then unplugged her phone herself and pointed her toward the exit while the boy mouthed "thank you" at me like I had just saved his life. If these stories made you laugh, cringe, or feel second-hand justice, hit subscribe so more of these moments keep showing up in your feed.